Welcome, Regenerative Renegades, to another podcast. Got a very interesting person. I was just talking to her a little bit before we started. I'm learning things about her that I didn't know, all very fascinating. Allison Hohn is with us. I'll give you a little background on her. Executive Director for Naturally Minnesota, formerly known as Grow North, leading strategy and growth for the organization. Naturally Minnesota, nonprofit, based at the Carlson School of Business at the University of Minnesota. She brings together, I think this is so cool, entrepreneurs, brands, retailers, investors, service providers, and industry experts for the natural products community in Minnesota and surrounding states.
You forgot farmers.
Oh, do we fit in there? Well, we're entrepreneurs, I guess. Farmers.
You're part of the ecosystem. Where does our food come from?
That's right. And farmers. Prior to that, 10 years plus building a holistic understanding of the food product development cycle as a food scientist at Land O'Lakes and Target, where she mentored corporate accelerator companies. We'll have to figure out what that is. Corporate accelerator companies. It seems like
they have internal accelerators. So.
Oh, do they? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Go-to-market strategies and scaled production. Previous to that, Director of R&D for the 1516 Group, a New York City-based consulting firm advising startups in various capacities. Holds a BS in chemistry from Butler University. Masters in food. Excuse me?
Said go dogs.
Are they dogs? I don't even know.
Bulldogs. Yep.
Bulldogs. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. The Butler Bulldogs. Mm-hmm. Masters in food science from K-Fans, or C-Fans, not K-Fans.
Not the radio station.
Not the radio station, C-Fans. And a master's in supply chain management. Oh, so you went to school at Carlson School of Management too, huh?
I did.
A master's?
I did.
So, where I like to start is to hear your story on how you traversed from growing up, basically, to where you are and what, some of the common threads, some of the inspirations, some of the challenges, some of the difficulties. So if you could start by, I think you have a fascinating position I've always been fascinated. I mean, to be able to interact with all those people that all have a stake in food, right? Like you mentioned. And I just think it's so cool that I think it's one of the coolest jobs I've seen. So,
the organization sits in a very unique position in the ecosystem. And to your point, you do get to interact with everybody, and not many people get to see all parts of the value chain. So it is very fun. You get to meet all the best people because food has all the best people. But yeah. Sure. I mean, I'm a Minnesotan, St. Paul, born and raised, detoured to Butler for undergrad, played soccer there, dabbled in track. Did high jump, not running. I hate running. So definitely not one of those people. Won't be doing any marathons later in life here. Came back, master's in food science, and went straight into, diehard R&D at Land O'Lakes. And it was a really, so many people, especially being in the home center where we have Minnesota Cup, and MinCore, and it's obviously entrepreneur focused. People are excited by entrepreneurship. They think it's fun and sexy. They want to get into it. And I told all of our interns just last week, I was like, I'm going to be honest, like going into corporate America for a little bit actually is a really helpful training ground to understand how does the big world work, and how do things get done there, and what are the systems and the organization, and how do they interact? Because that's an education that you can't necessarily get in school, of understanding how it really works on the ground.
I didn't. I have a business degree, but brand manager at Schwann's, that's where my education happened.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
I totally agree with that advice. Go see how the real world works and learn.
Even just for a few years. You don't need to be there forever. You'll quickly learn whether or not you're meant to be there. It took me a while to figure out where I was meant to be. And I spent 8 years there, which as a millennial, was probably way too long to stay at any one company. But the people were great. I was in dairy foods R&D. I was a butter scientist for a while, which is a really fun fact to share with people. And it was great because you really
learn. Have yourself sculpted in butter though?
No, but my mentor, when he retired after 30 years, we got his bust sculpted in 50 pounds of butter.
Anybody outside of Minnesota probably thinks we're crazy, but it does happen.
If you've ever been in the Minnesota State Fair, which I am a diehard fan of and have my own app for eating at the state fair.
You
So
do. I saw that. That's
if
so
you
cool.
need tips for eating, hit me up. But they carve all of the Princess K of the Milky Ways in 50-pound blocks of butter, and you can see them live carving it during the fair. It's a fun activity. Anyway, we digress. Land O'Lakes, great. Learning how do you build a product from Excel formula to benchtop to scaling in a pilot plant to then going into a plant and having to scale full scale and go through commercialization runs and ensure your product meets spec. And that's a really great training ground to understand what does it actually take to build a product that's successful. And obviously you're working with cross-functional teams, marketing, transportation, supply chain, logistics, everyone to deliver that product at the end. And that was why I ended up getting a second master's in supply chain management, was because I'd be running these 20-person CFTs. We get 6 months down the line, and then they'd be like, oh, we actually can't do this. And it's like, where was this 6 months ago when we asked these questions? So for me, it was, one, I didn't want to leave and do a full-time MBA. And so supply chain management was a 1-year accelerated program that I could do while working full time. And it was the STEM version of an MBA. So keeping one foot in the technical side, which was, my core, and one foot on the business side to get some of that credibility, because as much as you have great partners on the business side, unless you have a degree or experience on business, people will not believe you have any credibility to make good decisions or recommendations. It was a fascinating study of people not listening, even when you're like, here's why this is silly. No.
You scientist nerds just don't know.
No, stay in the nerdery. Stay in the nerdery. What are you thinking? Get out of here.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Degree,
go do what you do in that lab thing over there. And
do what we tell you to make. Yeah. And don't ask questions.
So tell us a product that failed and a product that was a wild success.
So many. I mean, this is what I tell people, like 90% of what you work on in R&D goes nowhere. The 10% that maybe gets to commercialization phase and launches, only 10% of that will still be around 2 years later. So there were many things I worked on that went nowhere, and some that launched and then were killed. So the last 2 years of my career at Land O'Lakes, I worked on a squeezable butter spread, which was an interesting product because there's the continuum, right? There's butter, there's spreadable butter with canola oil. And to make something squeezable, you have to keep adding oil and reducing your milk fat content in order to get that texture. And there's also processing things you can do. There's a type of packaging you can use to make it easier to squeeze. All of those things worked in harmony to deliver this product. So it really was, we actually got a patent out of it. It's the one and only patent I have is on this product.
I'm jealous. I want a patent.
You too can also try and get a patent. We launched it. I think it was in market for under a year, and then they killed it because it was one of those things where the amount of people who actually wanted that product was pretty small. People if they want butter, they want butter. They want to taste and have a mouthfeel of delicious, creamy butter. And this was an okay product, but not delivering against that expectation. And so I left right before it was being commercialized, and it was fun to see it in stores. I still talk to that engineer. She and I are still friends. But that one was a sad one. One product I did work on that is still out there is the European style extra creamy Land O'Lakes butter. That is a high fat content butter. So in the US, it's 80% fat is the minimum to be called butter. In Europe, it's 82%. So it's higher fat, less moisture. Some go up to 84, 86, even higher. And that was a fun one. That one I worked with that mentor on. We traveled out to the plant in Pennsylvania. I remember being there, honestly, at this time. It was like December 23rd, right before Christmas. And I brought Christmas cookies that I had made because I was like, you got to be friends with the people at the plant. They're the ones that are the whistleblowers of anything going wrong. Like that also in terms of collaboration and how do you get alliances with the people that count, making sure the people who are actually making your product, you really want to be, on their good side.
I learned the same thing in our pizza plants at Schwann's. I loved, first of all, they're really good people. People that work at plants are just good people.
Yeah.
And man, you get them on your side and they'll bring ideas to you, and they make things work when maybe they shouldn't, or they are told they can't. And yeah, they make it all go. It's so great. And they're good people to be friends with anyway.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a handful of plants I went to on repeat, and it was always fun to catch up with those folks. And I mean, I was there for 8 years, so you end up building long-term relationships with those people. So it was really great.
So what are you displacing when you make the European style? You're increasing the fat. What are you taking out?
Moisture.
Moisture.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a couple different ways.
What does that end up in the consistency? Is it harder?
I mean, it's denser. Nope. It's denser and creamier.
Okay. So it's good. It's gooder.
It's delicious. Yeah. I mean, I remember literally being at the plant, and obviously like butter churns at commercial scale are like the size of a small room. Like you could fit into them, and it comes out the pipe, and there's a little hatch, so you can check, like take a sample and check. And we're literally taking like handfuls of butter and, like taking a bite like an apple to test it, which
I love butter. I really do.
Agreed. That's one of the reasons I could never go vegan. Dairy.
For sure. When I go to a restaurant, they're always swimming in seed oils generally in restaurants. So I ask specifically, do you have butter? Well, I think we might have some, usually. Like, okay, please give me butter. Give me butter when you fry the whatever it is that you're toasting or whatever, and give me butter on the side. And because I feel like if enough people ask,
more commonplace,
they will have it. So, do you have opinions about that? Butter versus seed oil?
I mean, it's a murky, dangerous place to be, because people who have opinions have very strong opinions on that. I mean,
but you're a scientist.
At home, yes. At home, I either cook with olive oil or butter. Sometimes both in the pan.
Not coconut oil?
Occasionally.
Yeah.
If the type of cuisine calls for it. I have coconut oil. I have avocado oil. So it depends, but that's my politically correct answer.
Yeah, I can tell. That's good. You're at the university. I understand. Well, anyway, moving along, left Land O'Lakes, went to Target, was in product development. So product development for own brands. So I helped launch the Good and Gather line when I was there. If you buy anything Good and Gather in the deli, specifically the hummus, the fresh raviolis, ready heat proteins, soups, dips, all the specialty meat and cheese, those are all programs I worked on. And it was very different being in R&D there than at a classic corporate like General Mills or Land O'Lakes, because at the large classic companies, you are, an inch wide but a mile deep in your expertise. And at Target, it's the inverse. It's a mile wide and an inch deep, because they don't own any of their own manufacturing. So they leverage vendors for that. So you work with a vendor when you're doing development. And you're doing all these categories at once, right?
Yep. So much different animal to adjust to, but you work with a buyer and you partner with the business team. And so, having that fresh degree and coming off of that, I made a point to kind of insert myself in the business unit I worked with to understand, how are they making decisions? How do they look at own brand versus national brand? How do they manage their category? How do they leverage guest data to make decisions? And so between the two, I ended up with an actually really thorough understanding of what does it take to build a product, scale it, get it through the supply chain. And then at a retailer, how does the retailer make decision? How does the consumer look at the product? And it was an really great education when you think about the food business as a whole.
Yeah, well, I bet you they loved you at Target with that experience that you had. Really?
Yeah, it was interesting. You get mixed reviews sometimes. What's fun? This was pre-COVID. And so being downtown, like Target, great culture, super fun at that point. It was a really fun place to work. I would say, like many corporate environments, if you ask too many questions, sometimes they're like, hey, stay in your lane. And that was where I started to realize maybe corporate wasn't for me. And, the windy road of how I ended up, at Grow North now naturally is, I mentored at the Accelerator at Land O'Lakes and at Target. And I actually coached club soccer for a decade. So I was coaching girls from 8 to 16 anywhere from 5 to 7 days a week at times.
Wow.
So it was a commitment, but it was super fun. I loved coaching. I loved mentoring. I loved seeing progress. You had teams for at least 2 years. So
Hmm.
it was really rewarding. And when I stopped coaching, that's when I started consulting for the 1516 group in New York. And
Okay.
that was all about helping entrepreneurs. So it was scale their formula, find a co-man, do trials at their co-man as they're scaling.
Hmm.
And it was really fun and I loved it. And when the role at Grow North popped up, it was like, oh, I get to help all the entrepreneurs, not just ones who can afford to pay,
Yeah.
you know, a consultant, which isn't that many.
Right.
It was a really interesting opportunity and stepping into a role that was essentially like running a startup,
Hmm.
because we are very small but mighty. It's a
Hmm.
nonprofit. I did not have experience in running a nonprofit, so that was a very steep learning curve.
Hmm.
And I started in May 2020. So it was,
Okay.
how do you turn all of this normally in-person programming virtual and figure out how to continue to engage the community? And
Mhm.
especially when no one's meeting in person, how do I meet all of the people and the partners that we're supposed to work with? So it was an interesting road to get here. It's been 5.5 years now, which is crazy.
Mhm.
Um, but it's been an incredible journey. I mean, I get to meet amazing people who are doing incredible things all up and down the value chain. And, people love to eat, people need to eat. And the passion is so high. And that's why it's the best people. They're so into what they're doing. And that always shows.
Yeah, when I was in college, I gravitated to food. Well, I was raised on this farm now that I moved back to, and I worked in restaurants and my way through college. And uh, I was very pragmatic. I was like, well, people will always eat.
Hmm.
And I love preparing food and growing food. And I thought, well, okay, that seems somewhat familiar.
Yeah.
And then it was so cool. One of the things that I just remember very clearly about somewhere you were speaking and the topic was, somewhere probably back around 2020, with the Food Ag Ideas conference. Is that what you would
Hmm.
call it?
Hmm.
Conference, Food Ag Ideas Conference, was how Minneapolis and the upper Midwest is really an international food hub.
Hmm.
And I knew food was, the milling and the history and all that, like I knew it was central with growers around and all that, but I never really stepped back far enough to say, oh, wow, it is an international food hub.
It is. And, we obviously there's huge legacy here, right? You mentioned some of it, but we are a top 5 ag producing state. We have a land grant university.
Hmm.
We have the highest concentration of food scientists per capita. We have almost 10 Fortune 500s food and ag companies located here.
Hmm.
We also have access to 10% of the world's fresh water supply and are
Hmm.
centrally located from a
Wow.
logistics standpoint.
Yeah.
And so when you think about how resource rich we are in Minnesota, it's actually quite astounding. Um,
Hmm.
and one of the really fun things about this role and the organization is sitting, kind of in a seat that has visibility to all of that. At the U, there's the Tech Comm Center where they're commercializing new technologies coming out of research. I have a chance to do farm tours and talk to farmers and understand where does the food come from and what are the challenges, and like infrastructure continues to be an issue. um,
Hmm.
and then we have obviously so many industry folks here, and because we have all those big Fortune 500s, all of the support industries also blossomed here. All
Hmm.
of the agencies,
Hmm.
brokers, retail, like everything is around here. And so Minnesota really outkicks its coverage when it comes to the amount of resources we have here. Yet it's ironic because when people think of, the mecca of food city, or not even food cities, I should say, but innovation, the coasts obviously come to mind first.
Yeah.
Colorado, even Texas,
Hmm.
depending. And so it's unfortunate in that, we have not done the work to really do good storytelling,
Yeah.
to bolster that reputation. But I think there's a lot of opportunity coming, because so much is still happening here. And I would also say Minnesota is a little bit of the, heart and center of a lot of what's happening on regenerative. I was just talking to someone who was in Florida with a bunch of leaders in the regen side, and they're like, "What's happening in Minnesota? It seems like more is going on there. Like you guys are doing things differently. What's happening?" So, I think people are finally starting to take notice, which is really fun.
Well, and I don't know if you see this in the seat that you're in, but I that whole lack of storytelling, and to me, it kind of goes along with our personality, the
Oh,
humility.
humble, head
Yeah,
down, work
yeah,
hard.
yeah, yeah. Which I love. I
Hmm.
love that. But at the same time, it can be a detriment too, because you're not sharing the story. You're not having the, I guess, the pride and the loud pride of saying, look what we're doing, because we're just
Hmm.
working.
Yeah, well, the bad dad joke I always tell people is everyone here is literally and figuratively working in silos. And that, no one wants to ask for help if they don't have to.
No.
Everyone works hard. And it's honestly, it's unfortunately to their detriment. If you go to other cities where there's really strong entrepreneur communities, especially in like the Boulder, Denver, or out in California, people are so freewheeling with information. Here's what
Mm,
I'm doing. Here's where I got capital. They will tell you their life story 5 minutes after you meet them
mm,
around what they're doing. And honestly, I think it's to their benefit because if you're talking to someone and you say, "Oh, well, this is where I'm struggling," or "I did this," it sparks connections. "Oh, I actually know someone who's doing this. Would
mm,
you like an introduction?" And you have to pry it out of Minnesotans what they need help on. It's like they don't want to be an imposition, and it's unfortunate because I think the medtech industry here has done a much better job of cultivating more of that share culture. They
mhm,
also have had more exits, and those founders who've exited have reinvested in like
mm.
done another startup or a mentored directly. And we haven't had as many exits in Minnesota on the food side. We obviously have huge legacy companies,
Yeah.
but we haven't had those exits, and then we haven't had that reinvestment of social capital in the same
Mm,
way. And
yeah.
that has actually been a barrier. And one thing that we're really, naturally trying to figure out, how do we support breaking down those walls and getting more peer-to-peer, founder-to-founder relationship building,
Yeah.
in both structured and unstructured ways? Because that's the culture we need to really thrive here.
Hmm.
And what's exciting is we're at a point where, if I look at 1 to 100 million, in revenue, we have about 40 companies in that space right now.
Mm,
Like there's the
yeah.
Johnny Pops and the So Good So Yous at
Mm,
100. You've got
mm,
Seven Sundays coming up. You've got Smackin' coming up. You
mm,
guys are in the middle. Simics is in the middle. We've
mhm,
got Busy Coffee. We've got Peace Coffee.
mhm,
Willa's is coming up. Mazah's coming up. Huxley is coming up. There's so many companies, and it's really exciting because we've never had that density,
oh, is that
even
true? No.
5 years ago. And if
Wow.
you if there were companies in that space, they're very quiet. I mean,
Yeah.
there's companies like Abdullah Chocolates or even Cameron Coffee that are here, even Caribou Coffee,
Yeah.
is local,
Yeah.
but they just don't engage as much
Right.
locally. And so trying to get people to, pull themselves out of their day to day and show up. And that's what I always tell people, especially, my organization is very focused on programming and events that convene and bring together and educate.
Hmm.
And you have to show up in order to benefit. Like
You
that's what a
do.
thriving community is people showing up for each other. And it's, even though Minnesota is so community focused, it still remains one of the biggest challenges. And we have 10,000 cottage plus. I think we have 11,000 cottage food produced, like licensed folks.
Oh,
We
really?
have tens
Um,
of thousands of people in the major corporate industry here.
yeah.
Where is everybody?
I don't know. I'm squirming because I'm guilty of all of what you're saying about what a entrepreneur, founder, farmer, all those things. It's like, oh,
Oh, I mean, farmers are the busiest. Like there's
yeah,
no down season for you really. And
no, but
like but that's the reality. And I know that, right? Like people are so busy. They're working in their business. They're working on their business. It is hard to step back. And in my position, it can be frustrating, right? Because it's
mhm,
like we do all this work and effort to create really great events and do things for the community. And you want people to be there to experience, to benefit from it. And it's always hilarious to me whenever, especially new people come to something and, introduce themselves. And they're like, I had no idea you existed. And I like, this is so great. I mean, we just had our holiday happy hour 2 weeks ago.
you
And
did.
there were so many new folks there who exact same thing. I met so many interesting people. This was so great. I can't wait to come to the next event. And I'm like, please tell a friend, bring somebody along. Like awareness for my org is still our biggest battle. Um,
Yeah.
and it's a challenge. So I
Do you
really
work?
appreciate you having me on here. So at least,
What-
maybe a few more folks can hear about
Absolutely.
Nashville, Minnesota and get engaged.
Yeah. Well, it is a wonderful. I mean, the things you work on they're well done. They're professional. They're so good. Do you ever work with the Entrepreneurs Organization, EO, or have you ever even heard of them?
I want to say I've heard of them, but not directly worked with them. No.
Yeah, same kind of issue. So I founded the chapter years and years ago. Back then it was called YEO, which was Young Entrepreneurs Organization, so under 40, and there are requirements and things. But we had the same challenges of getting entrepreneurs to show up. And then when they did, we'd have a room of 20, let's say, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, when are we getting together again?" But then to get them to the next one, it was a challenge, and it was a challenge for me too, because you're like in the middle of it, and you're like, "Oh, today's the day I have to leave at 3 o'clock to go do this," or we'd have all day sessions where you'd have to, "Oh, today's the day I got to unplug completely," and then you'd leave at the end of the day, and you're like, "Okay, that was so worth it." Whatever I was going to do today seems so small compared to what I just learned or the people I met or whatever. I wish I could solve it for you because it was the same challenges.
It's an evergreen challenge. And I get it. Like everyone is busier than ever. There's so many demands of time. Like life's insane. The world is insane.
And the people you're targeting are I would say the busiest.
Like just think about so many hats.
Think about the life you described. You were doing all these more than full-time positions, plus you were coaching soccer 5 days a week, or whatever, So
back in my 20s, in my youth, when you have energy and extra bandwidth to do silly things like that. Not silly. It was great. I miss coaching. I do not have I did learn. Shockingly, in R&D, you don't have to use a lot of emotional bandwidth to do your job. Weird. Who'd have thought?
You nerdy scientists.
Nerdy scientists emotional. Themselves. And I realized I had so much more to give of myself because that wasn't being tapped into at work. And I mean, you've known me for a few years. I'm an extremely social, outgoing extrovert.
Yes. Yeah.
And I learned, I was like, man,
you don't hide your feelings at all.
No. Well, I'm Minnesotan born and raised, but most people are like, "Are you from the coast?" Because I'm a fairly direct person. And I just find it gets you to answer so much faster.
Oh, I love it.
Direct. Direct but kind.
Yeah. For sure. It's efficient is what it is. Yeah, it's very efficient.
Got time.
Yeah. Right. No, I agree. The first time I went to New York, I felt like I'd found my people. It was I'm like, "Oh, you're going to tell me exactly how you feel? I'm not used to that, but it's cool."
You're like, "Great. Now I know exactly what to do."
Yep.
There's no wondering.
Yep. I might have to just walk away. I think that's what you're telling me. I'm just going to leave now. Thank you.
Yeah. It works for everyone. So now culture here is an interesting conundrum. And a piece of that, which is also fascinating, is that because we are such a heavy corporate culture, people here spend most of their careers in corporate, which is great. It is, stable. You can have a wonderful life. You can raise a family. All of those things make Minnesota a fabulous place to live. However, it also breeds a lack of risk taking. And, Minnesota is not known for being overly conservative at times, and depending on what facet you look at. But when it comes to capital, that is one of the areas where we really struggle. It is extremely conservative around capital. People don't talk about money. They squirrel it away. They make very, I would say, traditional investments to manage their money. And so, as investing in any type of food business is extremely capital intensive. It is not like developing an app and then, replicating it into sales. Like you need cash all of the time for inventory holding, for ingredients, for packaging, for processing time,
equipment,
for everything. And it's a different landscape to invest in. It's a different timeline. It's a different multiple at times. And that's really hard to train people who aren't used to investing, especially here where it's like med tech and SaaS. And it's like, especially SaaS, short turnaround, high multiples, quick investments. And people are like, well, why would I invest in food?
Yeah, food seems stodgy. It seems,
so, and it's higher risk. It is. And so, I mean, any startup is high risk, but, that becomes a real challenge. And so what's both good and bad, I would say, in the last few years, especially as the capital access has shifted dramatically. We're kind of flush with cash in 2021, 2022, and then it's been really everybody's holding the reins. The brands and the companies who have built sustainable business models, who have great product market fit, who have healthy margins, who understand their consumer, who understand where they should be selling their product, are the ones who are succeeding. And that's kind of, when we think about that next wave, that 1 to 40, the people who are in that 1 to, or in the 1 to 100, the 40 companies in there, they've been building and pivoting and doing what they can to sustain their business. And they're surviving because of those things. And that's the hard part, but that's what's exciting.
Well, that which doesn't kill, what's the saying? If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Yeah, because that's true of our company, that's for sure. And, we have a different set of dynamics because it's kind of isolated on the cattle market, which is at historic highs. And
also a fascinating market right now with screwworm and everything else happening.
Tariffs, screwworm. I mean, I read daily about what's happening with the market because of, it's just basic economics, supply and demand. And where's the supply coming from? It changes weekly. And demand, though, has been steady. And that was what I did not predict that correctly. I thought when we reached a certain average retail price in retail, consumers would just start trading down to other proteins. But as of today, it still hasn't happened with record high, by a significant margin, record high average retail prices. So it's interesting. I think there's been a pivot back to, the pandemic drove us a little bit, pivot back to animal proteins, which is interesting. I think from a nutrition standpoint, I think it's very positive that people are rediscovering animal proteins and what they offer.
Yeah, there's been a renaissance, especially on the beef tallow front. Our conference, you mentioned Food Ag Ideas, is our largest convening moment of the year, right? It's truly an intersection of everyone who's in the food space. And historically, we'd kind of covered a wide variety of topics there. You've participated more than once.
I love it. I love that conference. I genuinely mean that. It's an awesome conference.
It's really fun. People always learn so much. They always meet great people.
What month is it?
October.
That's right.
So, last year, obviously, we moved to a single theme last year, and the first one was regenerative agriculture. And so it was so fun to have, starting with farmers, talking about what does it take to actually grow crops differently when you have cover crops, when you're doing different practices on farm. How long does that take to shift? I mean, there's so many challenges for farmers. They're not incentivized. Crop insurance isn't a thing. Right. Although there is a lot of work being done to do that. What's fascinating is insurance companies are finally coming around because they have realized with the amount of inclement weather events, they will start to lose too much money because they're going to have to continue to pay out. And so they're finally realizing we won't have a sustainable business model because weather events are getting so severe, so common. And so they're now wanting to say, okay, how do we incentivize practices that are going to stabilize the soil? And it's so hilarious and also sad, late stage capitalism really coming in hot on this one of until it benefits them, they're not incentivized to help people do the right thing. And I'm glad we're finally getting to the point where they're going to be incentivized to do that. But it is so fascinating that, farmers doing the right thing, whether it's rotational grazing, whether it's cover crop, whatever those things are, however you want to define regen ag, I'm not going to define it for you because there's too many definitions.
There's a lot of definitions depending on what you're producing. It means something in every different product, let's say.
Yep. And so,
which is fine.
Yeah. And, that, and I think it's a challenge for consumers because they still don't understand what it means entirely.
Well, I don't know how
they know it's good.
I don't know how they could. You'd have to be an expert on all these different product categories and then the practices that go into them and how regenerative is different than conventional. I mean, it's a lot. You have to have you have to have some trust as a consumer to just navigate.
And I mean, organic has paved some of the way, right? Organic did create enough of a whiffum, what's in it for me for a consumer to pay those premium price points of hey, there's less pesticides, there's, these things, that's why it's healthier for you. My hope for the regen movement is that, especially on the product side, they can figure out what is that whiffum going to be? And nutrient density, I know, is a big one. Yep. I know you guys have done studies around that with your own products. And I think it's going to be what is the repeatable, demonstrable data that's showing the nutrition value is that much better or more important. And I think that actually is really starting to matter to consumers. They're starting to wake
Boy.
up. I mean, 60% of people's diets come from ultra processed foods.
Yeah.
People are, this year our theme was food is health. And I will say, an overarching theme was like, eat mostly plants, like not too, Michael Pollan, right? Like
Yep.
eat real food, mostly plants, not too much.
Yeah.
But I think people are realizing that, there are benefits to animal protein and,
Yep.
in sustainable protein, there's a place for all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's exciting to see what of those trends are driving consumer habits right now and changes in the market. Supplements are kind of falling off. They had their moment in the light, and now
Yep.
people are saying, hey, if I'm eating food and I know it can deliver nutrients, antioxidants, functional value and benefits, I'm expecting my food to do that.
Yep.
It's not just food as fuel, it's
Yep.
food as function. So
You just crossed my mind an article I read yesterday about onions and garlic and the
alliums,
positive effect that, yeah. How do you say that?
alliums.
Alliums. Yes. You're so quick with that. Of course, you're a food scientist, but I didn't even realize that. I had no idea. I thought they were kind of throwaway things that tasted good.
No, always add more garlic.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And that's the thing, but there's the, proximity to where your food comes from. Also important, right? Because you lose nutritional value in transportation, you lose it,
Mm-hmm.
things that are out of season. And so one thing that's been really fascinating, especially in Minnesota to see, is kind of the rebirth of indigenous practices
Mm-hmm.
around eating seasonally, around native plants. Obviously in some of the like regen chicken, right? How do you use hazelnut trees
Mm-hmm.
and the berry bushes and everything to create that 360 ecosystem that's supporting the land and
Yep.
soil and water. So hopefully more people, again, it's the benefit, the premium price point, and consumer education.
Well, and it just feels good, in those indigenous practices. It just feels good to like eat squash in the fall
Mhm.
or, the early
It
lettuce
just
or
makes sense.
yeah, it does. And when you can kind of just embrace it and give yourself permission to have that variety in your diet, there's just something that's gratifying about that, I think.
For
In
sure.
the beef world, we're going nose to tail because, well, that's an indigenous practice. You don't throw anything away. And, whether that's oxtail or organs or tallow, now we have 3 tallow products. We have refrigerated tallow, shelf-stable tallow, and body care tallow. And
I have two of them. I
do
think I
you?
have the jar of shelf stable tallow, which I was using to fry potatoes.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Delicious. Delicious.
It is delicious. Great with eggs too. I love it with
Oh,
every
I
morning
believe it.
with eggs. Every
I
morning.
mean, I'm a butter and I like to make an herb butter that I just have. And then
Oh,
it's like, you don't have to worry about seasoning as much, like sure, salt and pepper, but fresh herbs really do make everything better.
the only thing about butter is on high heat it breaks down,
Correct.
and
Which
tallow
is why
doesn't.
sometimes I use a combo of olive oil and butter
Yeah, yeah,
because you get the high flash point
yeah,
of all oil.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that about tallow because it doesn't. I mean, it'll start on fire before it breaks down. I've learned.
Not that you don't do this at home.
No, that's right. Don't do it. Yeah, I had a thought before when you said on regen, on soil and fixing the soil and what people are going to gravitate to. On 2 things there. One is because health is kind of everything. When you have it, it's great. When you don't, it's like nothing else matters. Good health. I think the nutrition thing, it's so, well, from a scientist perspective, it's so easy to prove now.
Mhm.
I mean, the testing costs have come down to a level where you can literally test periodically throughout the year. We can,
Mhm.
everything,
Yeah.
everything that's in that piece of protein. Um, and 10 years ago, yeah, I guess you could, but it was
Yeah.
prohibitively expensive.
Yeah. Access to a lot of testing has been democratized, which is great. So people can get more data to prove that. I
Yeah.
mean, what was really ironic coming out of at Food Ideas this year with Food is Health Our closing keynote was Elizabeth Clotis, who's a cardiologist, doctor, and she started Step One Foods, which is, granola bars and things that you eat 1 or 2 a day. Step one, eat 1 a day, replace like a bowl of oatmeal you normally would eat. And it will lower your cholesterol and improve heart health, because heart disease is one of the #1 killers in the country. And it can be controlled with food. And it was so ironic because it really is like, it's not that hard. Like, you eat whole foods, drink enough water, get enough sleep, move your body, and
get
have
some sun.
That's it. Yeah. That's longevity. That's how you go from having lifespan to health span. And that it's so, we know what we need to do, yet we don't do it. And that was the big joke, of conversation, was like, we know what we need to do.
Yeah.
Humans are the one species that know what we need to do to live healthy, yet we don't do it. No other species has that problem.
That's true. Yeah. We know the good news. Now we just have to act on it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's hard because, companies make things that are really delicious, like Cheetos. And, they prey on our caveman attributes of like, give me all the salt, sugar, and fat to, store up for winter. And, we also live in weird, stressful times where it's like, man, all the beautiful things in the world. And we have to, like, I don't know, deal with work every day. Like, where did we go wrong? Like, human progress has been an interesting curveball. Yeah. But so it's ironic. And that's where I think, the natural products industry is really evolving rapidly.
So what do you see? I mean, again, okay, natural products industry, throw out some things that you see that are like either trends or surprises or things that are not being addressed.
I'd be remiss not to mention protein, because, no one asked protein if we wanted to be put in everything, like cold foam at Starbucks. Yeah. I don't know why we're doing that. And so, with the rise of GLP-1s, obviously that's impacting the need for protein. People I think they're getting the message and that they need to eat so much, and they don't. It's not that serious.
I didn't know there was a correlation.
GLP-1s with the weight loss, you end up losing muscle mass. And so it's actually important to strength train and eat enough protein to try and maintain as much muscle as possible while taking that medication. So you lose
the weight loss can come through muscle loss.
Yeah, and it will easily if you don't proactively take steps to mitigate that.
Okay.
So that's a big one. Fiber is becoming like the hot new sister of protein. And I'm really curious to see how this one plays out, because like 10 to 15 years, fiber had a moment where people were dumping inulin into everything as an additive ingredient. Bunch of fiber, bunch of protein.
When was that happening? Because I completely missed that too.
Oh yeah. And
that's your onion, right? That's the onion and garlic.
So what'll be interesting though, is with the rise of like whole food mentality, the easiest place to get enough fiber is to eat fruits, vegetables, legumes, pulses, naturally occurring fiber, fava beans, chickpeas, things like that. And historically, people have not been like, let me eat some crunchy chickpeas as a snack. But more brands are playing in that space, are, flavoring them to make them more tasty. Yep. So I'm really curious, so you guys were in our Bold Growth program, which is all around supporting sustainable protein companies. We just had a Canadian company called Three Farmers, and they have roasted bean snacks. They have fava beans, they have roasted chickpeas, and they're actually pretty delicious. Like, they're crunchy, they're savory, salty.
They taste like Doritos.
I'm not going to say that, but like, they have a dill pickle flavor, and like, I'm 100% on the dill pickle everything train. So if you go to the State Fair, Rick's Pickle Pizza.
Yeah. Oh yeah, dill pickle. Max makes the dill pickle pizza, don't you, Max? Yeah. One of the most popular ones. That and barbecue brisket, #1 and #2.
I mean, honestly, it's like, just eat the brisket solo. Like, you don't need to.
Well, but why not have it more than once in the day? Throw it on a pizza, have it for lunch.
I'm playing checkers, you're playing chess. All right, I got you. But so, fiber definitely up and coming, is a big one. And then people, when it comes to how people are interacting with brands, they want transparency. It's really easy to Google anything about a brand, get their history. So you have to build trust. You have to maintain trust. Anything you do to break that trust is going to rapidly erode the authenticity of your brand. And if you can connect with consumers on what your product can do for them, and deliver it. And it's, I mean, like table stakes product still has to be delicious. And I think that's one of the things people forget, especially in the natural foods and health sector. You know, I know you guys are very familiar with Expo West. It is always a riot to me walking that floor because you try so many products and they're like, it's got this and it's clean ingredients. And I'm like, and it tastes like cardboard.
Yeah.
Like, this is terrible.
That's when you know the nerds are in charge. See?
No,
it's got like, all this great stuff in it, all packed in.
Like we formulated it perfectly, and it's like, and it tastes awful. And so,
and the churn is kind of heartbreaking. You know, the churn of companies. It's like, oh,
I mean, but it's a low bar technically to get into the food space. You can start making something at home. You can start at a farmer's market. You know, you can get into a handful of retailers, but people really don't understand what it takes to be successful in retail. And so then it's like, great, should you be an alternate channel? Should be in food service or D2C,
e-com,
depending on what your product is, you know? So
it's like on Shark Tank. Every time they say retail on Shark Tank, you know, they go, no, don't go to retail. Do you have any, you don't know what you're doing. They'll kill you. They're going to stomp you. And it's
challenging.
It is very, very challenging. Retail is challenging. And which, you know, I mean, thank God I had my education in retail in my previous career. For all the young people listening, go learn at the big company.
And the hard part is most people who start a brand, a lot of them aren't coming from a business angle. Right. It's like my grandma had this great recipe and, you know, I'm making it and everyone loves it and everyone says it should be a product. And so I'm starting. And, you know, one thing at Naturally Minnesota, like we're here to support entrepreneurs from on farm through CPG. And on the CPG side, a big piece of it is educating, like, what does it take to be successful and prepare yourself for retail. And this past year, we just launched a program called Retail Launch Lab for earlier stage companies. And it was really the nitty gritty. Like, do you truly know your COGS? Are you paying yourself to make your product? You know, do you have trade spend accounted for? Do you have distribution? Do you have chargebacks? Do you know what that's going to be like? Or if you're using a distributor, like you may not even make money when you send product. And, you know, the eyes get wide and the fear strikes. And it's like, we're not trying to be dream killers, but we're trying to be, you know, realists of this is what it takes. And the best part about that program was at the end of it. I mean, we had a handful of people who were like, retail's not for me. Like, actually, food service is the channel that makes the most sense. Or like, I'm in both and I'm going to wind down my retail and only focus on food service. Or I'm only D2C. Or, you know what? I'm never going to make money on this product. So either I just make it for funsies or I just like don't have this as a business. And as challenging as that is for someone who's you know, it's your baby. Like
yes, it is. Yeah.
You've been working so hard.
Yeah.
We don't want people to mortgage their life 3 times over and invest in something that fundamentally is not going to work financially. And so that I think is why we're at a point where we're seeing more sustainable brands in Minnesota. And like, I'm going to give the smallest of pats on the back to us because we've been around almost 10 years. Next year's our 10-year anniversary as an organization.
Wow,
and so we've been, you know, fighting the good fight on like educating people and saying, here's what you need to know. And here's how you think about getting into retail. And we are very lucky in Minnesota to have some really wonderful early stage retail partners, Kowalski's, Lindsay Byerly's,
co-ops.
You know, they're retailers that will take chances on early stage products. And so it's a great training ground, but it's also like, you need to quickly figure out, like, will it work? Do people actually want your product? And then are you capitalized enough to make it?
Yeah. Well, man, that's all so great. If you ever need a guest entrepreneur or CPG that's made all the mistakes, just ask me and I'll come in and contribute.
I mean, that's true of right? There's endless mistakes we all make in what we're doing. It's, did you learn and did you pivot?
Yeah. Okay. So I have a question before we wrap up. When do you launch your brand or product?
It's so funny. Everyone will often be like, what are you going to do next? Are you going to start a brand? Part of me is like, at this point, I know too much. It's so hard. I don't know if I have a product that I think I'm passionate about to like power through and do that.
Yeah, you definitely have to have that.
Yeah, you know, like to sustain. I mean, I was talking to Connor from Johnny Pops earlier this week, and he's like, man, if you asked us 10 years ago, you know, if we'd be slogging still, you know, I'd be like, no, we're going to be like, we'll have made it in 5 years. And it's like, that's not how the world works in CPG. No. And so after essentially running a startup for 5 years, do I want to start a new one? Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's one idea I have rolling around, but unfortunately it's more on the ag tech side and it'd be wildly capital intensive. So and like a long time horizon. So it's, not super feasible.
Yeah. Well, Allison, thank you for taking the time today. Super interesting to talk with you and just to see what you're doing. It's again, you're sitting in that great spot. I wish I could spend about 15 minutes a day there because of the people that you're interacting with and all the intersections and having your finger on the pulse. So I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to spend time with us. And let me know
Absolutely.
however I can help with what your endeavors are. I'm
Well,
passionate
you
about
guys always,
entrepreneurship.
whenever I email and say, hey, can we come bring people on farm and do that? You always come with very welcome arms. So much appreciated to that. We need more people on farm to see what it takes, and where
I
their food
agree.
comes from.
I
And I
agree.
mean, people have no concept. I mean, we did that farm tour this summer with you guys,
Hmm.
and I got so many emails after and just, people leaving, with comments saying, this was so fantastic. Like, I learned so much. I met interesting people here. And that, when I think about what Naturally Minnesota is, we are an ecosystem builder.
Yeah.
We're here to support food and ag entrepreneurs. We do that through about 30 events a year. Like, it's a lot. And a lot
Mm.
of it's education and
Yep.
support for founders. But we do big networking events. We have our pitch slam, we have the
Mm.
conference. We do tours, we do manufacturing tours. So much of it is around convening the community, providing those on ramps, and creating the spaces for, all of the different people in the sector to connect because everyone is in their lane all of the time.
Yep.
And so having farmers and retailers and industry folks and service, brokers and agency people and, educators, people doing research, rarely do they get to sit down and interact with all those folks. And so that's what's really fun and exciting. And, I personally get to meet with about 200 entrepreneurs every year.
It's
Um,
amazing. Yeah.
and about
And
400 industry folks. And so, I
yep.
would say if you are in the food space in Minnesota, even if you're not, right, with Zoom, everything,
Mhm.
we're naturally Minnesota, but like we don't turn people away.
Yep. We still let
I'm
the
not here to,
cheeseheads
I'm
in,
not here
right?
to be a gatekeeper.
Yeah.
But the best part of my job is being able to now leverage the immense network I've
Hmm.
gotten through this role and use that social capital for good.
Well, and that
Because
is very needed. I want, like it's all good, it's fun, it's exciting and all that. But it is very needed. So
yeah,
we appreciate what you do. It fills a void of all of us running around with our hair on fire and just come and talk to each other once in a while. And like you said, share resources and ideas. And you feel like you belong to something then too,
mhm,
part of the
yeah.
bigger good, trying to feed people. What could be better?
For sure. And
Yeah.
like, if you're in the industry and you want to connect, please reach out. Like I say, I meet with hundreds of people every year. It keeps my little black book of who's doing what up to date. So when I
Hmm.
do meet with an entrepreneur and they say, "Hi, really need this," I'm able to say, "Oh my God, I can connect you to these three people
Wow.
who can help you with that." And that,
That can
it's the
change lives. That can change
it's
lives.
those connect. I mean, truly, it is the connectivity because they haven't. People don't know what they don't know. They
Yep.
don't know who might also be doing the exact same thing, and
Yep.
that's honestly one of the most fun parts of my job is being able to connect people who are working on, rowing the boat in the same
Yep.
direction of
Yep.
the new folks would say,
Yep.
"Skuma."
Yep. That's good.
Um,
Row up the
but
boat.
yeah, yep,
All
awesome.
right.
Well,
Well,
thank you
thanks
so much for
again.
having me.
Thank you, Allison. Have a great day.
You too. Cheers.
Okay.